She was only 14 when the lights of a Hollywood television studio first settled on her. At an age when most teenagers were worried about school, friendships, and discovering who they wanted to become, she stepped into a world that would shape the rest of her life. She couldn't have imagined that the young girl standing before those cameras would eventually become one of the most recognizable faces in the history of daytime television. She certainly couldn't have known that millions of viewers would one day feel as though they knew her personally, even while the real woman behind the famous smile was fighting battles no audience could see. For decades, Genie Francis became inseparable from the character of Laura Spencer on General Hospital. Her performances helped define an era of American television, and for countless fans she represented hope, romance, and resilience. Few television characters have remained as beloved across multiple generations, and even fewer actors have spent nearly their entire careers growing alongside a single role. The connection between Genie and Laura became so powerful that many viewers struggled to separate fiction from reality. The height of that phenomenon arrived in November 1981. The wedding of Luke and Laura became more than a television episode, it became a cultural event. Millions of families gathered around their televisions to witness a fictional ceremony that felt remarkably real. It shattered viewing records and transformed daytime television forever, proving that soap operas could command the attention of an entire nation. Yet while audiences celebrated a fairytale romance, the young actress at its center was carrying a weight few people recognized. Behind the applause, magazine covers, and public admiration stood someone overwhelmed by loneliness, relentless expectations, and pressures that had begun long before adulthood. Her journey actually began far from Hollywood. Born Genie Francis on May 26, 1962, in Englewood, New Jersey, she grew up in a family where acting was already a familiar part of everyday life. Her father, Ivor Francis, worked steadily as an actor on stage and television, while her mother, Rosemary, had experience as both an actress and model. Creativity surrounded the household, but so did the uncertainty that often accompanies careers in entertainment. Success was never guaranteed, and every opportunity had to be earned. When the family moved to Los Angeles during her childhood, Genie found herself much closer to the industry that had fascinated her father for years. Watching him pursue acting inspired her to dream of following the same path. She admired his dedication and quietly imagined that one day she might earn a place in front of the camera herself. That opportunity came surprisingly early. After her braces were removed, she convinced her father to share her headshot with his talent agent. A few small appearances followed, giving her valuable experience, but everything changed in 1976 when she was offered a role on General Hospital. At the time, the series was still searching for its identity, and no one involved could have predicted how dramatically both the show and the young actress's life were about to change. Initially, her character occupied only a modest place within the story, but producers quickly recognized something unique about the teenager on their set. Her performances felt natural, sincere, and emotionally honest. Viewers connected with her almost immediately, and writers began expanding Laura's role. What started as a supporting character slowly evolved into the emotional center of the series. As her importance grew, so did the demands placed upon her. While other teenagers attended school dances, spent weekends with friends, and experienced ordinary adolescence, Genie's days revolved around production schedules, rehearsals, and scripts. Traditional classrooms were replaced by tutoring on set. Instead of classmates, she spent nearly every waking hour surrounded by adults working under constant deadlines. Childhood quietly slipped away, replaced by professional responsibilities that few people her age could truly understand. The isolation became one of the greatest challenges she faced. Fame introduced her to millions of viewers, yet it often left her feeling deeply alone. She later reflected on those years with remarkable honesty, describing how painful and emotionally exhausting they had been. Success brought recognition, but it could not replace the normal experiences that most young people take for granted. At the same time, another struggle quietly began. Concerned about maintaining a particular appearance for television, those around the production encouraged her to lose weight. What might have seemed like routine advice in the entertainment industry became the beginning of a lifelong battle with body image. Still only a teenager and eager to satisfy the expectations placed upon her, she followed restrictive dieting practices that would influence her relationship with food for decades to come. What started as a professional requirement slowly evolved into a deeply personal struggle that continued long after the cameras stopped rolling. Everything changed when another young actor entered the story. Anthony Geary joined the cast as Luke Spencer, bringing an unpredictable energy that immediately caught viewers' attention. When his character's path crossed with Laura's, something extraordinary happened. Their chemistry felt authentic, and audiences became emotionally invested in every scene they shared. Writers recognized the impact almost immediately, and before long, Luke and Laura became the center of the show's biggest storylines. As the popularity of the couple exploded, Genie's life became increasingly complicated. Fame arrived with astonishing speed. Magazine covers, interviews, fan mail, and public appearances became part of her routine, yet none of it eased the loneliness she had carried since entering the industry as a teenager. Instead, the spotlight magnified every insecurity. Millions admired her, but very few truly knew the young woman hidden beneath the character everyone adored. By the early 1980s, General Hospital had become one of the most talked about programs on television. Every major storyline generated headlines, and viewers planned their schedules around new episodes. Then came the wedding that would become television history. Luke and Laura's marriage ceremony, and simply another plot twist. It became a nationwide event. Families gathered together, newspapers reported on it, and millions watched as though they were witnessing the wedding of close friends rather than fictional characters. Even decades later, it remains one of the defining moments in daytime television. But while audiences celebrated, Genie was privately facing an entirely different reality. The overwhelming pressure of carrying one of television's biggest successes had begun taking its toll. Living almost exclusively inside the entertainment industry had left her without the support system many young adults rely upon. Surrounded by older coworkers and exposed to an adult environment from such an early age, she struggled to find balance. The emotional burden became increasingly difficult to carry. Eventually, she found herself drawn toward unhealthy ways of coping. Looking back years later, she spoke openly about developing a substance addiction while still very young. She has never attempted to excuse those decisions, instead explaining how isolated and emotionally overwhelmed she had become. What began as an attempt to escape emotional pain gradually turned into a serious personal crisis. By the time she was 19, that crisis could no longer remain hidden. After experiencing a medical emergency connected to her addiction, she stepped away from General Hospital to focus on recovery. For fans, her departure came as a shock. One of television's brightest stars had suddenly disappeared from the role that made her famous. For Genie herself, however, leaving represented something much deeper than a career interruption. It marked the beginning of a long and difficult journey toward rebuilding her life. Recovery did not happen overnight. Like so many people facing addiction, she experienced moments of progress alongside moments of uncertainty. Healing required patience, honesty, and an enormous amount of courage. At such a young age, she found herself confronting challenges that many people never have to face. While the public focused on headlines surrounding her departure, she concentrated on something far more important: learning how to move forward one day at a time. Professionally, the transition wasn't easy. Although she returned briefly to General Hospital, those appearances were temporary. She later expressed disappointment about the way her original departure had been handled, feeling that both she and the show's loyal audience deserved a more meaningful conclusion. Instead, she found herself trying to rebuild a career while carrying the enormous shadow of the role that had defined her youth. Throughout the remainder of the 1980s, she accepted opportunities on other television productions, including major daytime dramas. Each new role allowed her to demonstrate abilities beyond Laura Spencer, but audiences still associated her most strongly with the character that had made her famous. Rather than becoming discouraged, she continued working steadily, determined to prove that she was more than a single television role. Away from the cameras, another chapter of her life was quietly unfolding. During the production of a television project, she met actor Jonathan Frakes. Their first meeting didn't immediately lead to romance, but fate eventually brought them together again while working on another production. As they spent more time together, their friendship slowly grew into something much deeper. Although her career continued moving forward, life delivered another heartbreaking loss. In 1986, her father, Genie Francis, passed away after suffering a series of strokes. He had been more than a parent. He was the person who first encouraged her dreams and introduced her to the acting world that would ultimately define her life. Losing him during a period when she was already rebuilding herself emotionally was deeply painful. Even so, his belief in her remained something she carried with her throughout the years that followed. By the early 1990s, it became increasingly clear that audiences had never stopped hoping to see Genie return to General Hospital in a lasting way. The connection between Laura Spencer and the show's loyal viewers remained incredibly strong, and when she officially returned in 1993, it felt less like an ordinary casting announcement and more like the return of someone who had always belonged there. Fans welcomed her back with tremendous enthusiasm, while producers quickly realized that her presence still carried the same emotional impact it had years earlier. Reuniting with Anthony Geary reignited one of television's most recognizable partnerships. Years had passed, both actors had matured, and the characters had evolved, but the emotional connection between Luke and Laura remained undeniable. Their scenes together reminded longtime viewers why the pair had become legendary in the first place. The stories now reflected older, more experienced characters facing life's complicated realities rather than youthful romance alone, allowing Genie to display an even greater emotional range as an actress. Recognition soon followed. Her performances earned critical praise and award nominations, confirming what audiences had believed for years, that her talent extended far beyond nostalgia. She wasn't simply returning to a famous role. She was bringing new depth and maturity to a character who had grown alongside her. Every scene reflected decades of personal experience, making Laura feel more authentic than ever. While rebuilding her career, Genie was also embracing another role she cherished even more: motherhood. She and Jonathan welcomed their son in 1994, followed by their daughter in 1997. Becoming a mother transformed her priorities. After spending so much of her youth surrounded by cameras instead of classmates, she wanted her children to enjoy the ordinary experiences she herself had missed. Family became the center of her world, and she worked hard to balance the demanding schedule of television with the responsibilities of raising two children. Despite her renewed success, the entertainment industry continued to present difficult choices. In 2002, after nearly a decade back on General Hospital, she asked producers for a more flexible work schedule so she could spend additional time with her family. From her perspective, it was a reasonable request. She had devoted much of her life to the series and simply hoped to find greater balance between work and home. Unfortunately, the request was denied. Faced with an impossible decision, she chose to step away from the show once again. It was another painful departure, made even more difficult because she felt her years of dedication had not been fully appreciated. She later admitted that the experience left her feeling disappointed and emotionally drained. After investing so much of herself into the character, leaving under difficult circumstances reopened old wounds she thought had already healed. Even after leaving, however, her bond with General Hospital never truly disappeared. She returned briefly for special appearances, including a memorable anniversary celebration honoring Luke and Laura's legendary wedding. Those performances reminded viewers that time had not diminished her ability to command the screen. In fact, many believed she had become an even stronger actress. Through the wisdom and life experience she had gained away from the spotlight, that belief was reinforced when she received a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress. For many fans, the honor felt long overdue. It recognized not only a remarkable performance, but an entire career built upon perseverance, professionalism, and emotional honesty. The award represented validation after decades of challenges, proving that genuine talent eventually earns the recognition it deserves. Asterisk, yet even with professional recognition finally arriving, one deeply personal battle refused to disappear. Ever since she had been told as a teenager to change her appearance for television, her relationship with food and body image had remained painfully complicated. The pressure to maintain an unrealistic standard followed her throughout much of her career. Every return to the screen seemed to bring renewed public attention to her appearance rather than her performances, something she later admitted was emotionally exhausting. She spoke candidly about years of dieting, emotional eating, and the frustration of constantly feeling judged by impossible expectations. Rather than hiding those struggles, she eventually chose to discuss them openly, hoping others facing similar challenges would understand they were not alone. Determined to improve both her physical and emotional well-being, Genie committed herself to healthier habits later in life. The progress she achieved wasn't simply reflected by changes in her appearance, but by a renewed sense of confidence and peace. She explained that feeling healthier also lifted a cloud she had carried for years, allowing her to enjoy life in ways she hadn't experienced for a long time. It wasn't about satisfying Hollywood's standards anymore, it was about finally taking care of herself on her own terms. For someone who had spent decades living according to everyone else's expectations, that realization became one of her greatest personal victories. Asterisk still, life had another difficult chapter waiting for her. In 2018, she learned that her role on General Hospital would be reduced from a full-time contract to recurring status. After devoting more than 4 decades to the series, the decision came as a painful shock. She later admitted that the change left her deeply discouraged, saying she struggled emotionally for several months. For someone whose identity had been intertwined with the show since childhood, it felt like losing a piece of herself. The disappointment wasn't simply about work, it reopened old feelings of uncertainty and reminded her how fragile even the longest careers in entertainment can be. Fortunately, the story didn't end there. Fans quickly rallied behind her, voicing their support and making it clear that, for them, Laura Spencer simply wasn't the same without Genie Francis. The overwhelming response did not go unnoticed. Before long, she was restored to a full-time contract, a powerful reminder of the lasting bond she had built with audiences over nearly half a century. Their loyalty reinforced something she had earned long ago, not just popularity, but genuine respect. After everything she had endured, from personal struggles to professional setbacks, she once again proved that resilience had become one of the defining qualities of both her career and her life. Asterisk, as we come to the end of Genie Francis's remarkable journey, her story reminds us that true strength isn't measured by fame, awards, or record-breaking television moments, but by the courage to keep moving forward through life's hardest battles. From a teenage girl who sacrificed her childhood for a dream to a woman who overcame addiction, heartbreak, personal struggles, and countless professional challenges, she proved that resilience is the greatest legacy anyone can leave behind. If her story touched your heart, thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your favorite Genie Francis memory.